And now I'd like to ask Veronica Lacey to join me here on the podium to say a few words about her program. Veronica.
Thank you, Alan, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute thrill to be here this afternoon. My name is Veronica Lacey. As Alan said, I'm President and CEO of the Learning Partnership, and I'm so excited. We have a capacity crowd here, over 360 young people and their very favorite significant adults. And we hope that this will become an annual Bring Your Kids to Lunch Day. I want to thank the Canadian Club for making this possible and to the sponsors. Let's give them a big hand. You know, it's so exciting and rewarding to think that aside from all the kids that you're actually seeing here in downtown Toronto, whether in offices or the court of law or in the hospitals, there are over 300,000 kids right across the country, sea to sea to sea, doing exactly what you're doing. Whether it is the docks in Halifax or whether it's farmland in the Yukon, kids are finding out about all the possibilities that are available to you as you make some very, very significant choices. And for the adults who participate in the program, because it couldn't happen without you, I want to very much thank you for your support and your commitment. The whole raison d'etre of the Learning Partnership is to champion a strong publicly funded education system in this country, and we believe that every youngster deserves to get the support to strive for personal excellence. And so this is what the Learning Partnership believes Take Our Kids to Work is all about. It started in 1994, 13 years ago. For the kids in this room, where were you 13 years ago? Not around, many of you. But imagine where you're going to be 13 years from now. And Verity talked, and others have talked as well, about being a bank president. What an exciting thought. And so this room is filled with future doctors and tradespeople and designers and perhaps the Prime Minister of Canada. Isn't that exciting? So why do we have this day? Because making a career choice is becoming increasingly complex and challenging. You have so many opportunities. And it's so important that you know what is out there. So it's just as important to say, this is an interesting job, but I'm not going to do it. This morning I was on the radio with a radio station from London, Ontario. A young man was doing a newscaster's job. Is that what he wants to be? No. He said on the radio, I want to be a real estate agent. Well, what a good way to spend the day, nevertheless. And so, you know, when many of us adults, left school, we knew what we wanted to do. We stayed in our jobs. But your lives are going to be different, and they're going to be exciting, and they're going to be changing all the time. And so this is what this day is all about, to get a clear understanding of what is out there. Maybe you already know what you want to do in life. That's great. Quite often, though, we all feel like the great Homer Simpson when he says, for the last week, it's been my lifelong dream to be an inventor. What a great statement. So maybe you too have a lifelong dream job. Maybe you don't yet. The good news, though, is that your life is before you, and all these choices and dream jobs are before you. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's event. Many of you probably recognize her from City News, certainly I do, where she has worked since 1998 and now serves as weekend anchor. Please welcome Mirella Fernandez. And joining Mirella are three very special guests, Brian Colangelo. And if you haven't seen Brian's photo in the paper, you must buy the newspaper. He's our new great male model. Fantastic. He is, of course, the president and GM of the Toronto Raptors. Marissa McTasney, the founder and president of Tomboy Trades. What a great title. And Andrew Wolf, the animator and layout supervisor with Chorus Entertainment. Thank you to each one of you for being here. In a few minutes, the floor will be open in order for you to have some of your questions answered. But first of all, Mirella, over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, I don't think you could ask for a better panel, all sorts of different experiences, really different jobs. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, very little bit about myself. Anybody here from Malvern, by the way? Anybody? Scarborough? Let's do Scarborough. Come on. You just don't want to admit it. That's right. So I grew up in Malvern. I went to Catholic school, Pope John Paul II in Scarborough. And I was one of those people who didn't know what I wanted to do. So all of you who don't worry. It'll come to you. I wanted to write for a living, and I wanted to make a living writing, so I went into journalism. It was sort of, how am I going to make money doing what I want to do? Well, I'm going to go into journalism. And then I ended up getting an internship in television and went on my merry way. So it wasn't like I wanted to do this for a living. It wasn't my dream, but I took it as my own when the opportunity came and made something of it. So for those of you who haven't decided what you want to do, don't worry. It'll come to you. You'll find it. It'll find you. And you can make a go of it any which way you want to. So don't worry about that. I want you to look at the people up here, myself included, and I want you to picture them 15 years ago, 20 years ago, because it's hard to do that. You're looking at a really successful group of people, and you don't know that maybe one of them worked at Mary Brown's Fried Chicken for a long time. Maybe somebody else, did a job that it wasn't the greatest way to start, but they did those things, and it was all part of that great plan of becoming who they are and the successful stories that you're going to hear about today. So everything contributes to your experience in life, and although it might not seem like math or English class or even being here today is going to help you, everything contributes to your later success in life, and I think the panel would probably agree with that. It's all part of you in the making. So that's the little snippet about me, and we're going to start with the little snippets from everybody else here. Guys, in 20 seconds, they told me to give you 20 seconds, I don't know what. We want the snapshot. We want where you were born, where you grew up, and where you went to high school or college. And why don't we start with Andrew and we'll move this way.
Okay. I was born here in Toronto in North York. I went to high school at Claude Watson School for the Arts, and then I went to Sheridan College where I studied illustration. And I just basically started working right out of second year of school as an illustrator, and then I moved into animation in the early 1990s.
Okay. Marissa.
My name is Marissa McTasney, and I'm from Toronto. And I went to Lawrence Park Collegiate Institute, and then when it came to university, I wasn't quite sure, so I did go to OCA, Ontario College of Art, and also York University.
Brian.
I'm Brian Colangelo. I was born just outside of Chicago in a town called Harvey, Illinois. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I went to high school there. Traveled back east to Ithaca, New York to go to Cornell University. I studied business management and applied economics. I moved to New York and I was working in commercial real estate.
Great. Let's talk about when you were 14 or 15. What did you want to be when you were growing up? I know when I was that young I wanted to be an archaeologist, but that had a lot to do with Indiana Jones, personally. Can't wait for the next one to come out. So let's start on the other end and move back. Brian.
I always felt I had a calling to be a general manager. I think from the time I was about 4 years old. I had the good fortune of growing up in a sports family. My father was the general manager of the Phoenix Suns. At the age of 28, he was named the youngest ever at the time general manager. And I got a chance to observe him and watch him, and I grew up in the business. I always knew I would come back to it if the opportunity presented itself, but I was advising on trades at a very young age, and I was told to mind my own business on several occasions. The one that stands out the most is there was a coach that we had. He was there for several years, 13 years to be exact, which is an eternity in the business. And Father called and said, I think we need to make a trade. What do you think? And it was trading Dennis Johnson to the Boston Celtics for Rick Roby. And I told him, I said, I asked, why are we doing this? He said, well, the coach feels he's a problem in the locker room. And I said, maybe it's time to get rid of the coach. But that's...
And you were 6 at the time, right?
Not quite, but I've always felt like I've had a sense for the business because of my opportunity growing up in that household.
Thank you. Marissa?
When I was 15, I wanted to be rich. I didn't know what I was going to do. I really didn't. And if you asked me, that was probably the only answer I had at the time. But what I did know at 15 is that I loved working with my hands. I loved fine art. I loved creating. And that's where I spent a lot of my time. I also, in terms of working, I always loved working. I was into swimming. So I took my bronze medallion, bronze cross, and that carried me through right till I was about 22 before I started to travel. And it literally, I ended up teaching swimming, training lifeguards how to lifeguard, and going right as far as you could really go before I went traveling. And I would also like to add that the traveling was probably one of the best experiences I had because I really got to understand the other cultures and what was going on in the world from a real point of view rather than just reading it from a book. And that's, I'm a real hands-on person. So for me, that was a great education as well.
Okay. Andrew?
When I was 14, 15, I guess I wanted to be a comic book artist. I used to really love drawing. My mom still has drawings I did when I was really, really young. It's basically all I did to the detriment of my schoolwork. And at that time, I really wanted to draw comic books. I used to go to all the conventions when I was a kid and show the professionals my work, and I got a lot of really positive feedback. So that was my dream back then. And that's pretty much, it's a lot of people I work with, they have a very similar background. There's a lot of people in animation, they really love comic books because it's a very similar art form. So that's pretty much, I always knew I wanted to be an artist. I knew I wanted to draw.
Let's talk a little bit about the jobs we had when we were their age. Yes, Mary Brown's Fried Chicken was one of them. I was also one of those people who called you at home and asked you 100 questions, telephone surveyor. That was me. $6 an hour, which was good back then, which tells you how old I am. Let's start in the middle with Marissa and find out what sort of jobs you did as a teenager and what did you learn from doing those jobs?
The water for me was always the really big thing in my life. I loved teaching swimming. I loved teaching kids. And it took me a while to figure out what my thing was. It wasn't until I had my own kids. So some of the jobs I had were always very physically related. And when I taught the swimming, I went traveling, and when I came back from traveling, I needed to grow up a little bit and get a real job. And I still didn't know what my thing was. And I got a contract job. I knew how to type. So you guys will learn how to type in high school. If you guys already know, different generation. But that's what got me my job, my corporate job in computers. And so from that, I sort of went through the ranks at my corporate job, but it really wasn't my thing. When I had my kids, I spent some time to focus on it. And that's what today is really about. You might not find your thing today or know what it is, but you're taking courses and you're being presented with many different options. So, really experiment with what it is that you enjoy doing, and you will find it out. I found it out about 10 years a bit later, but all of the experiences that I had that built up to today were valuable. I have no regrets, and I learned tremendously from everything. So that was it wasn't real experience in any one area. I wasn't born into a distribution business. It just was something I was interested in and explored it, and I've fallen in love with it.
Okay. Brian?
I had a couple different things and experiences growing up. My first job was a paper boy and used to deliver the papers. And the thing that I feel I got out of that is not only the the scheduling and timing every day. You had to be on time, but it was responsibility. If you did not deliver your newspaper, boy, did you hear about it. And collecting money, you got to handle the money in those days where you would literally not deliver the paper, but you'd have to go out and collect. So it was a lot of personal interaction with people, and it's tough to ask people for money. It's tough these days when we're asking people for contributions to charitable functions and various things. But it was just a great learning experience and a lot of personal interaction, which I felt was great. Second job was probably a busboy at a Mexican restaurant, and I learned a lot about what to look for in restaurants when you're eating. But the best experience I had there, again, came from the personal interaction with people. But the real lesson I learned there is integrity. I had a coworker that was doing some things that were not right for the company that we were working for, the restaurant in this case. And it was a very difficult situation, but I ended up leaving the job because there was some theft going on, and I just felt like I didn't want to be anywhere near it. So it was a learning experience from that standpoint.
And could you ever get the smell out of your clothes and your hair? Because the fried chicken never left you, I gotta tell you. I don't know, Mexican restaurants got to be just as bad that way.
Fortunately, there was a lot of open patios because of the location in Arizona.
Andrew.
My first job was actually as a paper boy as well, and I remember when I got it, one thing my father said to me is, you can't quit this job. He was an accountant, and I think he really valued work ethic and responsibility, and it was tough. I have similar experiences trying to collect, and I really desperately wanted to quit, because in the middle of the winter, the last thing I wanted to do was get up at 4 a.m, and deliver papers before I went to school. An important thing for me was when I was about 16, I got a job at a summer camp, a fine arts day camp, as just teaching cartooning. And that was my first chance to really work with kids and work with a group of people. And I really got a lot out of that, just working with people and showing them things and just seeing their enthusiasm and how much, they were really, really interested in drawing. And it kind of validated what I was doing, because at the time I wasn't getting really a lot of positive feedback from most of my teachers, because they just thought, they thought what I was doing was a bit trivial, I think, because I would just be drawing continuously. But having these kids, I thought, somebody likes this. So, I don't know how much it meant having an 8-year-old telling me I was the greatest artist he's ever seen, but at the time it helped me sleep at night. And then I guess another job I had, which had a big influence, believe it or not, I was working at a summer job at a garden center, just basically doing some very small landscaping jobs and just doing some watering. And it just basically taught me, work ethic. And even though that wasn't what I wanted to do at all, it really taught me to take pride in my work and really try to do a good job. And that's just a value that I got from my dad, was just taking everything you do, just try to do the very best you can, because you never know what it can lead up to. And I learned a lot doing that job, and it gave me a lot of time to think, and it also made me realize this is not what I want to do. I mean, it really pushed me to work harder on my skills, because I wanted to move away from that and really pursue my dream.
Okay. Let's talk about what motivates you to get up and do what you do every day. I'm going to start at this end and move back.
Basically, it's because this is what I've always wanted to do. I know for a few years I was living in Australia, and the studio I was working at, it was very, very high pressure and very demanding, and I'd have a lot of people come into my office and complain they were very unhappy, and I could understand it. It seemed very unfair sometimes, the structure and the system, but I just would always say to them, isn't this what you always wanted to do when you were a kid? Like for me, the chance to work at Walt Disney, go into work every day using a pencil and a paper and just drawing, that to me, if somebody had told me when I was 17 that's what you're going to be doing, I couldn't ask for anything more. And although the stress and the pressure it does get to you, still at the end of the day, that's really all I want to do. And for myself now, every day I just get up because I love film, I love drawing, and I just want to push myself and see how far it can take me. And it's just what I enjoy doing.
Marissa.
Well, my business, so it's Tomboy Trades. So When I started it a year and a half ago, I was actually leaving my corporate job so that I could learn how to build houses. I really wanted to learn how to build a house right from the foundation to the roof. And that was what I set out to do. But what happened was they gave us this voucher, because all of us girls who were in this course had to go buy work boots. And we went into the store, and they were only tan and black, and we had to buy men's boots. It was a horrible experience. And so I said to the store manager, where are the pink work boots? Like, I've seen there's a girl on TV, she has them on. How does she get them? Well, this is when I learned she had them custom made, and nobody would give the name of that shoe designer. So I had to do it myself. And it wasn't, it's become more than just the pink work boot. It's now that women are in the trades, it's not difficult. You have to learn how to do it like any profession. But there's a lot of equipment now that actually makes it physically easier for men and women. And my goal was to run a company of women who build houses as a contractor. But the boot business has taken off, and it's because there are so many women out there that are in these jobs in manufacturing, forestry, architects, designers, and we all need to have safety equipment. And so what started off as just a mission for a pair of boots for myself turned into a lot more people wanted it, and now I'm getting feedback from women, and that's really what gets me going every day, because for the first year and a half of this business, I've been doing it for free. I've been a volunteer of Tomboy Trades, and there's days when you get 3 hours sleep for about a week and 2 weeks, and you think, why do I get up in the morning? And I really don't have a good answer for you, other than to say I just really love it. And when you get an email from a woman who loves your pink work boots, and she's knocking on your door because she has to have them, it's really fun. It's really exciting. And so there's more to it than just the daily grind of your regular activities. I call them defining moments that move you in a certain direction, and that's where you make your decisions and get up and go the next day.
Brian.
I think I'm motivated every day by the fear of failure. And in a very public business, that can be translated as fear of disappointing people. Every time my basketball team steps on the floor, they have that opportunity to potentially either get someone very excited or get someone very disappointed. And last night, by way of example, was a perfect example of that. We got beat pretty badly to the point where at one point I wanted to turn the TV off. I didn't. I shut my eyes at one point and said, am I dreaming? This has got to be something false. But it shows you the kind of swings that we have in our business, in the industry that I'm in. 4 nights ago, we beat a team, New Jersey, who's considered a great team, by 37 points. And then last night, a team that we clearly are stronger than, at least in my opinion, we got beat pretty handily. So every day, I'm motivated by, again, that fear of failure, fear of disappointing people. Again, I was fortunate to grow up in a household that was involved in the sports business, and that's really where I got my opportunity to learn the business and also get my first opportunity. But I put extra pressure on myself always, because I knew people would look at that and say, he's there because of his father's occupation. And it made me roll up my sleeves that much more, and I promised myself I would never be outworked by anybody. And it's a very important part of my life and career right now, and that's to always try to lay it out there. No matter what it is I'm doing, I want to win. And how do you win? You have to achieve success, I believe, through hard work and dedication and a passion for what you do. So if you don't have a passion for what you do, you should probably look for something else. But I'm motivated every day by the fear of failure.
Okay, we have some specific questions from some of the students. First one's for Marissa. What obstacles did you find in starting your business? I'm going to throw in as a woman as well, not just as a business person, but as a businesswoman.
I would say the hardest struggle for me personally as a businesswoman isn't that I'm a businesswoman, but it's that I'm a mom, because my kids are really little. They're only 2 and 4. So when I started this business, my daughter was just 10 months old. So managing, there's a big struggle that a lot of you young ladies will face is, when you have your children, do I stay home or do I go to work? And it's a big debate, and you've got to do what's right for you. But that was really the toughest thing for me to negotiate in my own life, was how to manage it all. And I actually I like to go to these luncheons and hear other people speak, and I have a few female heroes out there, and one of them was speaking, and she said, you can have it all, you just can't have it all at the same time, all at once, and not by the time you're 30. So it's not what I wanted to hear, but, it's the reality when you want to raise, fantastic people, and that was my goal. So that would be the toughest challenge. As a woman, it's fantastic being a woman, because there's certain perspectives that you bring to the business world and to the boardroom and the business table, and being in different cultures where they're typically male dominated. It's really interesting to see it from my point of view and then explain it to the men that typically do business every day. So it's been fascinating that way. One of the reasons I did this business when I had my kids is because I wanted to teach them a philosophy on life. And that's why I gave you guys those notebooks. So you have those notebooks, and there's pens on the table. And I was determined today to make sure you all wrote in those books and, take away some of the things that you've heard from any of the panelists, or you've been at work all day. The thing I want you to take away from me is I want you to dream big. So find your passion and dream big, think the impossible, and love passionately. Because you will find a lot of roadblocks and a lot of people that will say, I don't know if you should do it, but if you know it's right inside for you, it's the right thing. Just as Brian said, if you're not passionate about it, it's not your thing. And that's absolutely right. Find what you're passionate about, and the rest will all fall into place, just as you said as well, and it will align up. So
I remember somebody saying to me when I decided to take journalism, and this was a family friend, well, why are you going to take journalism? You'll never get a job in journalism. And 10 years later, I'm like, it's hard. You're going to get people, and some of the people you look up to even might say, that's too hard or too impossible, or you're reaching too far. And for someone like me, you were lucky your dad could sort of teach you the ropes, and you were surrounded by it growing up, which is great. You could just absorb it. For someone like me, I'm the youngest of 6 kids in an immigrant family, and, it was a struggle to dream big and to learn what I needed to learn to do what I do today. It was a real struggle for me. Communication skills, social skills, personal skills, all of those things mattered as much as just knowing how to do the job and learning the right talents and tools it took to do my job. So,
and the other thing is there are no boundaries.
No.
Only the ones
you put up yourself.
Right. The people will say to you, oh, well, there's a reason you can't do it. But there really isn't any reason you can't do anything. If it's something that you want to do, there's always a way to do it.
Absolutely. The next question is for Brian. What do you like most about your job? What do you like least about your job?
I think I'll answer the least part first. We have to make a lot of tough decisions, and sometimes those decisions affect players' lives, and whether it's cutting a player or trading a player, they go through a lot in their life. I know everyone thinks professional athletes are overpaid, or perhaps just very well-paid people that aren't affected by everyday issues and societal issues, but there are quite a few things that affect players, and I've been in the business now for quite a while, and I've seen all kinds of things, and trying to help players along the way and give them opportunity to overcome some of their issues is certainly something that has been challenging, and it's also rewarding when you find a solution. But when you have to bring a player in, as we did, say, a week ago with Luke Jackson, and tell him that he was not going to make the team, and to see the disappointment in his face, and to basically be sending him home with, in his case, he did have some guaranteed money on his contract, so it was a little bit of a consolation prize. But it's just very difficult, because you're basically snatching someone's dream away from them, and so that's probably the most difficult. The most rewarding aspect of it is obviously to see the kind of fan reaction that can be generated from the success that we have when we have it. And everything's cyclical. There's going to be times that are very good. My father used to always say that the highs are never as high as the lows are low in this business. But those times when, like last year, when we had some success, we won the Atlantic Division Championship, we got to the playoffs, and to see the enthusiasm in the crowd and in this marketplace, it's truly a rewarding experience.
And I guess the highs never seem to last as long as the lows do.
That's true. When that final buzzer sounds in Game 6 at New Jersey, the season's over like that.
Very easy question for you, Andrew. Who is your favorite Disney character? I heard a yes over there.
I guess Donald Duck. Really? I just thought, especially as a kid, he was just so obnoxious. And he's a very selfish character, and as a kid, you have all these rules and boundaries, and seeing the duck get away with whatever he wanted to. And he was just not your standard animated character, especially back then. A lot of them were really milk and cookies, like Mickey Mouse, but Donald Duck, he just kind of spoke his mind and did what he wanted to do.
The problem
So.
is I couldn't understand him.
Well,
Spoke his mind.
That was part of his charm, I think.
That was part of his charm.
Kind of like the Roadrunner then, too, right?
That's right.
Can you do the Donald Duck?
No.
You're sure?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
This next question is for all of you. If you could turn back the clock, somebody called us old in this question, I don't know who, and do another job, would you do another job? Why or why not? Marissa, why don't you start?
No, I wouldn't do another job. I chose this.
Okay,
So I
Andrew?
wouldn't.
No, this is what I've always wanted to do, so I'm pretty happy.
Okay,
I'm
Brian.
happy with my job, but I love architecture and
Oh,
design.
really?
And if I could walk away from this right now and I had to go back to school, I would certainly study that and pursue that dream.
Okay. Brian, this is a question for you. What are the rituals you go through before each game? And question number 2, what do you say to your team after a particularly tough game like yesterday?
Well, I leave the communication of the team really up to Sam Mitchell, our head coach. And, there are times where you either address the team or talk to individuals, and you just try to encourage people. I'm always looking for the positive side of things. I often say in our room when we're evaluating players, tell me what a guy can do, not what a guy can't do. And so I always try to talk about those things, the positive things that happen in a game with those players. Rituals, it just depends on the day. I've been doing a lot of work since I got here, talking to a lot of season ticket groups, different sponsor groups, and spend a lot of time on the court observing the other players on the other teams that warm up. You find things. I like to pay attention to detail and things like watching a young player like Jermaine O'Neal, who played in Portland for several years, and for 5 years he was a young high school kid coming in to the league. He never played, but he was honing his skills under the tutelage of a very solid assistant coach, Tim Gergerich. And to watch him for those 4 or 5 years that he was just working and to see the dedication he was putting forth, it was really amazing. And then once he got to Indiana, the Indiana Pacers, it really showed immediately. He blossomed into a great player, and now he's an all-NBA player. And so I like to go down and watch the players warm up.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question of each of you. Who is your mentor? We'll start with Andrew.
My mentor? It's hard to say. Artistically, there's a lot of people whose work I really admire, and I did have one fellow who was when I worked at Disney Toronto, believe it or not, when I was hired there, I hadn't done really anything in animation, specifically for animation, and my fellow was my supervisor at the time. His name's Ricardo Durante. He really showed me the ropes and taught me a lot of things, and was very patient because I was making a lot of mistakes. I just never went to school for it, and I had to learn on the job, and I felt very stressed because a lot was expected, but he really helped me out a lot, and I'm still in touch with him. He's a great friend, and he's a fantastic artist himself, so he really would probably be the closest thing to a mentor for me.
Marissa.
I would say I have quite a few mentors because I take When I hear people say something and it resonates with me, I sort of hang on to it. So I have a lot of mentors out there. My mom, my sister, absolutely. And then there was a lady, Joanna Galifi, and she gave me my break at IBM. And she really allowed me to be myself and use my brain and perfect what it was that I was doing for her. And so she was great at making me be my best. And she allowed me to see it myself as well. So she was a key in my career. But then, I love Debbie Travis. I love Martha Stewart,
Well, who doesn't?
Yeah.
Brian.
If I said anyone but my father, I'd be crazy. But I learned so much from him over the years. And again, I like to pay attention. I like to listen to all the phone calls that he had, whether it be with players, agents, you name it. Sometimes listening in on his radio show where he would answer questions to the fans. I just feel like I've been around the business so long because I learned so much just soaking it up from him. But there's others. Sometimes you got to go outside of that. And by way of example, formerly no longer here, but Cotton Fitzsimmons, former coach of the Phoenix Suns, and several other teams. He won over 900 career wins in the NBA, and I still hear his voice in my head during some of my decision-making processes, some of the things that he would, just words of wisdom that he would give to me in the process of decision-making and the approach to decision-making. So those two.
I got to say, I still hear some of my teachers' voices in my head. Scary, but true. One of my teachers was also my basketball coach. So we used to run lines to train, and every once in a while, he's in my head telling me to go farther, telling me to go harder. And it's amazing how the people you look up to, their voices stick in your mind. All the advice that they give you rings true time and time and time again. Andrew, how is technology changing your job, and where is animation going is a question from kids.
Technology has really, really changed my job because I worked at Disney Toronto at a studio, and after about 4 years they shut it down. And then I went to Sydney, Australia, and I was working at the Disney studio there, which had been around 17 years. And eventually they got shut down as well, and a lot of that was because of the technology. I think we were doing all traditional work at Toronto and Australia, the Disney stuff. We had elements of the CGI, the computer-generated imagery within those films, but 95% of it was traditional, and it just seemed that they made the decision that they wanted to just, they want to do everything. Disney at that point was doing Chicken Little, so they want to really try to do the whole 3D thing, so they shut it down. And the work I was doing at Chorus, I had to learn the software. When I started, I was doing everything on the computer, but I was still approaching everything with a traditional mindset, and because it just works. And I just tried to use the computer as a tool. Myself, I still love drawing on paper. I had a big drawing tablet there, and I really high-end and everything, but to me, I still would do some drawing on paper and have that scanned in, and then I'd manipulate it with the program. I think animation is very cyclical as well. And I think what's happened now is what happened with 2D is they glutted the marketplace. I think there's so much 3D out there now. I have a lot of people telling me, including my nephews, that they love when they come over to my house because they can watch the traditional stuff. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love The Incredibles. I think the stuff they're doing with the software is phenomenal. And some of the things that people can do artistically is just unimaginable. But there's something about a hand-drawn line to me, and I think it will come back. It's already starting to get more popular. And now that Disney's merged with Pixar, they're already starting to develop more hand-drawn stuff, which I think is fantastic news for the industry.
Quick question for all of you. How do you deal with stress? You're in very stressful jobs, very demanding jobs, lots of pressure, and a word you guys are going to want to get used to as you get older, deadlines, lots and lots of deadlines. How do you deal with stress? I'm going to go from this end to that.
Cry a lot.
Fetal position at home.
There were times, like when I first went to Australia, it really felt overwhelming because I didn't know anybody. I had no idea when I left how high pressure that job would be. It was very different than the Toronto studio. And you just have to take a breath and really just realize why you're there, why you want to do this. And my mentality really is just do the very best you can. And if that's not good enough, then at least, you can sleep well knowing you did the very best you could. I'll go for a walk, I'll get some fresh air if it becomes too overwhelming. But basically, I just put the hours in. I've always believed I like to get to work very early because it's very quiet at the studios. I could get a lot done, and I'm willing to put in a lot of work because this is what I want to do, and very meticulous and methodical. I want to do the very best I can do on everything. And the stress, I had a lot of supervisors saying, you don't have to be so precise, just let it go. But I was willing to put in the extra time so I could do the work the way I wanted to. But I just feel you just try to keep things in perspective. I mean, it can seem overwhelming at work, but you just have to take a step back sometimes and take a deep breath and maybe get some fresh air, and that's how I handle it.
Marissa.
I don't really know how I handle the stress. I guess it changes on the obstacle that I'm facing at the time. I like to write down a list and then just go through it one step at a time so that there's some organization, and when you accomplish something, then you're a little bit stress-free on that one item, and then you get to the next item. I put in a lot of hours. I'm, again, just like Andrew, very detail-oriented. I want things a certain way. I can see it in my head, so I inflict a lot of the stress on myself. So I can't really blame it on anybody else. It's something I've chosen. Maybe I enjoy it a little bit. It gets me going 24 hours a day. So I haven't mastered it yet, but
You're getting there.
I'm getting there.
Brian.
Stress, I'm not familiar with this word. No, I like to do quite a few things, but used to go out, when I was living in Arizona, I used to go out and always do work in the yard, whether it was trimming trees or digging a hole to plant a new tree, something that was just more physical labor. I think it took a lot of the pressure off. Now, because got a smaller yard and it's cold outside, occasionally shoveling snow late at night, but we haven't had much snow since I've been here. So I just try to continue to push through whatever it is.
Nobody said yoga.
No.
Nobody said yoga.
Not right now.
I think this is going to be the final question. I'm going to ask each of you, if you were to describe the qualities it takes to do your job, what are the qualities, what kind of person, what kind of character do you need to do what you do every day? Because I think we're going to get some surprising answers. I'm going to start with Marissa.
I would say just be who you are. So whatever it is that you bring to the table, bring it to the table. Be your best, whoever you are.
But what does it take to do what you do every day?
To do what I do, persistence. I'm a little bit aggressive. I like to sell. I like the hunt. I like to see my products come to life. I like to make people happy. So I don't know if there's a trait that I have that anybody else doesn't have, but I've just found my thing. So I just take me and do my thing.
Okay. Brian?
I think more than anything, you just have to have a plan, and you got to stick to it, and you got to have philosophies and ideals that are certainly solid, and if you need to adjust because something is thrown at you that forces you to adjust, you need to plan through that decision-making process accordingly. You got to, again, be very pragmatic, do your research, do your due diligence, make sure that you're doing everything that you can to line up the right answer, whatever that answer is. And again, what I try to do is set the example by working hard and doing the things that make the decision process easier.
I believe it's prize time. Prize time. Up come the baskets. We're going to put all of the questions into the baskets, and then we're going to pick whichever table that question came from. That whole table is going to win a prize. So that's the good part. And all of you guys get to pick a prize winner. Let's start. Okay, so we're going to start with Brian. Brian, if you want to hand me the card when you pick it, I'll read it out for you.
There you are.
Okay, girls at St. Joseph's, table 28. Where's table 28? back there somewhere? You get water bottles and calculators. That's from Rogers Broadcasting and 680 News. Congratulations. Marissa. Thank you. Marissa has picked, this was Alyssa's question, table 15. Back here. You guys are going to get CD, DVD holders courtesy of Scotiabank. Congratulations. And table number 6. Where's table number 6? There you go. Put your hands up. You guys are going to get movie passes courtesy of Cineplex. Congratulations, you guys. Thank you very much, panelists. We're going to turn everything back to Alan.
Marilla, thank you very much, and thank you to our panel for the insight into your fascinating journeys and some insight into your current careers. I can tell you by looking around at the students, I think all of you have enjoyed this afternoon. What a great opportunity to hear from these folks. In fact, now that I've got Brian Colangelo sitting beside me, I have to confess I've always wanted to be a professional athlete. Particularly, I'd like to play basketball.
Probably not going to work standing on the box.
You can have me, Chief. It's not going to work standing on the box. Okay. Thank you very much, Brian, Marissa, Andrew, and Marella for giving again so generously of your time this afternoon to be with these students from across the GTA. We very much value and appreciate the time that you've spent with us. Some of you haven't had a chance to get a photo with our guests. I will let you get that right away. But before I leave, I want to just leave you with a quote, Homer Simpson, and that is, all my life I've had one dream, and that is to achieve my many goals. There are a lot of career opportunities out there, and although it might sound a little cliche, you really can do almost anything that you want to. You may not be able to do it all at once, as you've commented, but you will be able to do it. So whatever your dream, I encourage you to go after it. And again, I want to thank you all for spending this lunch hour with us. Take care.